This episode is brought to you by Target Corned Beef and Naturally Almond. Parenting is an adventure, and like any other adventure, you've got to work hard and be prepared.
The quest is on.
We're in search for all things parenting. We hear from the kids, from the professionals, and from you, real parents on real issues. It's all happening right here, right now, on Care.
Care, the adventures of parenting.
Welcome to Care. Today we are going to try to understand misbehavior. It's all over the media. Everyone's saying this generation, that generation, millennials, this. Or everyone just bad talking us. They're bad talking the teens, and we're going to try to get to the bottom of it. So we've brought in all the professionals because they're going to help us explain and understand this so-called deviant behavior. To join us, we have Mr. Hamilton Padmore. He is with ALTA. He's a long-standing tutor and a director. We have Asha Langdon, a counseling psychologist, and Dr. Robert Moultrie, a doctor of internal medicine. He is going to explain what that is. And while we were actually talking before we started the show, Asha said she was a doctor of the soul. So we have a good cast. I mean, we've been laughing before we started, so I think it's going to be a fun show. It's a little bit deep. We're going to start with some deep things. Before we get into the actual topic, we try to get the views of what parents say, right? What they think, what the man on the street thinks. What's their reason for this so-called misbehavior? So before we start to talk, let's hear what the parents have to say on parenting views.
As a parent, from time they take out corporal punishment in the school, well, everything gone here wire.
Probably parents not taking time with their children to talk to them about it.
Family and how they're raised at their homes, and just the interaction between everybody at the household itself, right? So yes, it's the home.
When you really look at the population of children today, how they behave in the schools today, it looks as though both parents are not together. So, you know, it leaves a stress on the other child. So that is why we see a lot of fighting and bullying and all these things in the schools.
I don't think there's an increase. I think there's an increase in the coverage of the violence through social media, kids having the phone in school and things like that.
Right, so you've heard from the man on the street. Most of them, I think 90% of them said it was parenting, it was stuff at the home. One person said once they removed corporal punishment, that was it. And then the most interesting one to me was that he'd said there was no increase in violence. What we were actually seeing was just an increase in the media, in it being publicized because we now have cameras, etc. What's your take? Who's going first? We're gonna let ladies go first? We toss a coin? How do we figure it out? Let's get the ladies go first. Asha, what's your take?
My take on the increase in violence in schools, I think children reflect the society. They reflect the culture, right? I believe behaviors are indicative of something, right? They give us insight into needs, into wants. So if we're seeing this increase in violence, what does that represent in terms of what are the needs of children? What does it mean for us as a society and parents and what we are reflecting? What are we teaching our children? So I don't think it's just one category, either or. I think it's a lot of things that are happening all together that is contributing to the increase that we're seeing. And I do agree the cameras in school is now putting it on another platform, that we're now able to see things that we probably would not have been knowledgeable before.
Now, the Ministry of Education are trying to really come down and clamp down on the whole cameras in school. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? Because I personally like the fact that we get to see what's going on now. Everyone can chime in here.
Okay, well, greetings, hello, and thanks for having me on, and greetings to the panel here.
So well-mannered.
Well, wait until we go further, huh? No, I definitely, I agree with everything that was said, but there are two things in terms of the cameras in school. I think that, yes, it is definitely necessary, I believe, to know what is really happening and the truth behind it. Because as we know, some people can tell a story and there could be 15 stories that come out of that, and one will be the news perhaps, or one will be the thing that's in social media the most, and it's not what you see in the camera. And that has a momentum by itself. And the other is that a culture, I'll say this, a culture that likes violence, yes, there's a lot of people that like violence, a culture that likes violence, including girls, that like to film violence, like to even start trouble and film the trouble and prepare in advance to film the trouble that is about to happen. That is of also major concern. It has to be part of the picture of discussion.
No, I mean, like, I totally agree. Because, of course, Ash and I had a lot of discussions recently. I mean, there were a lot of things in the news, who's saying it's a prank, who's saying it's a this or that. And my thing was, you know, even if these things are being staged, that has to say something to us. Why are they seeking attention? I believe that if kids are seeking attention and we're not giving it to them, they're going to do more and more and more until we give them the attention that they're seeking. Why do they want to tape this? I do like what you said about we have a hunger for violence, you know. I always say just look at the media, look at the shows that are popular, look at the people that are popular. And that says, as you say, you know, there's a reflection of society at the end of the day. Tim.
Yeah. Thing that I think about cameras and so, I remembered our US embassy here. When you went there, they told you to put your phones in a box and don't take it into my embassy. We didn't fuss. Then they said, no cameras. We didn't fuss. But suddenly, Trinidad is into cameras and we start to fuss because the minister said, don't do this and so on. So we are people of the moment. And by next week, we'll have another story about the same thing, but a whole different milieu. So another passing Trinidad fad. That's what I feel about it.
I mean, yes, we do seem to not have stamina for causes and whatnot, but...
I wanted to share something on that. My perspective is because I always look at what is the reason behind the things that we do, right? That influences or should influence everything that we do. I respect what the school system is designed to do. It is part of the training of becoming. Here you have a group of young people, whether it's primary or secondary, they're forming their identity, they're going through development, they're progressing. The rules are in place to mold you in a particular way. So our rules should reflect what our culture values. Now, if we are saying we want to rewrite the rules of what we value, we're becoming more technologically advanced, this is the way of this generation, then those are conversations we need to consider. But just as it stands right now, in terms of the rules of the school, I would respect the rules of the school, because in the institutions that I work, I always encourage it. I said, but is this not a rule? Are you not aware of it? Because I feel as that we're shaping minds, we're shaping ways of thinking. And if I encourage you to disrespect a rule, it means that when you leave here and you encounter the laws of the land, you have no respect, you have no care.
Agreed.
So I meet you in the school system, you respect me because I have a title, but on the street, you treat me any old how. And that's why I think our culture reflects certain things, because we, as Tim was saying, we adhere to rules in one context, but in another it's like, but why I had to do that? So to me, let's value our rules, and if we as a society say we don't like the rules, then let's start another conversation.
Yes,
and
we
that's
work on change it, but until it is, we have to start with respecting the rule as it is.
Yeah.
Okay, agreed.
What was discipline, tolerance, and production, you know. If you have discipline, and I put a rule in, this is my environment, when you come in here, you follow my rules. You don't fight me and tell me, change your rules, okay?
Right.
And that is part of the whole system. We said at independence, we will do these three things so that we become a great nation. 50, 60 years later, we're not doing these three things, and the result is violence.
Well, we have to go on a break.
Okay.
When we come back, maybe we could continue this a little bit longer, because, as you said, maybe the conversation needs to shift. If this is the rule and we're not happy with the rule, do we then need to shift the conversation? We're going to go on a break. When we come back, we actually may not carry on the conversation about cameras, because we have a heart-wrenching story that we're going to hear when we come back. And she tells us why she lived a life of misbehavior. Don't go anywhere. You're watching K. Welcome back to Care. Today, it's all about understanding misbehavior. we were talking a little bit about the cameras in schools, right? Whether we like it or not, it is a rule and we need to respect it. If we want to change it, then we need to change the conversation. But while it's here, we need to respect it. We need to have discipline and we need to respect our rules. We're going to a bit of a heavier topic. I'm going to show a little clip, which is a real clip. This is an interview that we did. It is a Trinidadian, someone living amongst us. We did not show her face because we do live in a small island. And you're going to hear a real story from her. And in the clip, she explains that, people just look at her as misbehaved, not understanding the hurt that she would have gone through. So let's take a look at what I call our hidden angel.
I don't really remember how it started, but I remember watching TV, and then I just remember sitting on my brother's lap, and he was, I guess, like stroking me, like my skin, and I hated it. How old were you? 13. And how old was he? 25. I knew I didn't like it, but I wasn't really sure of much else. And I don't know that I knew how wrong it was or truly what was going on or what the concept of rape was. My truth, and that's what matters, is that I had to protect my family. I just knew or felt that if it was me, it wouldn't be them. I had a lot of behavioral problems from then. That as you get older, you realize what a part it played. I would try to find ways to turn him off of me. I had a fling with a few of his friends. I would be promiscuous with other boys my age, hoping he would get jealous and leave me alone. Because this went on from 13 to 17. I grew into a person that constructed defense and coping mechanisms that kept people away from me and at arm's length so that no one could hurt me. And if they did try, they wouldn't see me hurt. They would see a crazy, very angry, very irate me, and then the sadness would be done behind closed doors, kind of thing. But I always thought that this would be just something I would take to the grave. I always maintained a relationship with my brother. Nobody knew, nobody had a clue, nobody knew. I never moved left with my brother. I never gave anybody a clue. Nobody knew. All that people knew was that I was a very angry young girl and a teenager, and that's how I was. He knew me for years, and he just said to me, you're so angry. I haven't seen you in years, and you're just so angry. Who hurt you? And I just said to him, I said, what are you talking about? Nobody hurt me. Nobody could hurt me. Look at me.
I watched it. I mean, I did the interview. I still get goosebumps. She's not the first person that I've interviewed with that story. She's only the first that's willing to still tell it in public, even hidden. How common is that story? Asha, you're out there counseling. How common is the story? How common is it that girls, boys, teenagers, they are abused? They keep it quiet because they don't want to disrupt. They want to protect their families. And people are just thinking that they're angry, and they in the end become the ones, they almost, apart from being the victim, they then go on to be the ones that people look at as the deviant, because why are you so angry all the time? You can't be in a relationship. You can't settle down. You're always, you don't let people come close to you. And a lot of people seem to just be saying all these things, yet someone in the video, coming down to the end, she said that, she said, her stepfather said, who hurt you? He was able to recognize that you don't get angry like this overnight. You don't get to the place of pushing people away overnight. Someone hurt you. That's so, I guess, I thank God on her behalf that someone was able to pull her aside and say, look, you're not this person. This is as a result of something.
I think it's a common story. And one of the things I would like to commend you on in raising a topic like this is that you're normalizing the pain. And let me explain. A lot of times when you are violated, you feel as though you're different from the normal. Something is done to you that shouldn't be done to you, right? You are not processing your trauma, you're processing your pain. So having somebody who just comes and says it is not the norm. When you create platforms like this is what her uncle did for her, her stepfather did for her. He brought it out into the open and he made this topic okay to speak about. So platforms like this make it okay so that people can now learn that how I feel is normal. Being angry is an okay emotion when I've been violated. So it's very common and it's a major trigger for a lot of what we will label in brackets weird behaviors.
Yeah, because she said, she said up to today, if someone just touches her, this is actually, she's gone on now to have children. And this was an hour-long interview, and she had to try to explain to her children, be careful not to stroke me. She's had to swallow the feelings because, of course, you have a young kid and they may want to stroke you, and it brings things up, when you use the word triggers. Can you imagine going through life for so long having these triggers and people want to know, your mom comes and strokes you and you are like totally tripping off of that,
Her aggression was her coping mechanism. I always look at it as if you trip on a stone. When something happens, you build a new normal. So for her, she was damaged. So her new normal was to be this aggressive, tough person because you're never going to do it to me again. Her acting out behaviors were, I'm going to do all these different things to deter you. So she took on a new persona than who she would have been if this didn't happen to her. So in terms of understanding some of the misbehaviors, maybe the behaviors we're seeing are people trying to cope with their trauma, waiting for somebody to look past all these surface behaviors and says, you okay? What?
How do we get people to look past the trauma? I think even mentioning the word trauma, you get laughed at. People think we're raising a wuss generation who can't just suck it up. What's all this trauma about? Why are children needing counseling? And a lot of, a lot of people, my daughter goes to counseling, right? Because for me, I am a single mom. And I know enough to know that those things are traumatic and they must be dealt with very early on so that we can avoid a situation where she develops a new persona and coping mechanisms. Let's deal with it.
I think that's
and a lot of people laugh. A lot of people laugh. A lot of people say, she's 7. Why she need a trauma specialist or she need a psychologist? I get a lot of flack for that.
I'm glad that you brought this up. You asked me what do I do as in internal medicine or what's my background, and I'll share a little bit more. My perspective on medicine is that the way we think influences our physical health, and the same way of thinking influences our relationship health. So we are a culture of boxes, so the discussion of boxes is what I do, internal medicine. But as you grow and you develop and you listen and you learn, it extends beyond that. And so all of that is what I do. So I also do counseling in different ways. Yesterday, I also counseled someone who was suicidal. I won't get into the details of that, but a lot of things that you're saying is part of the culture of violence is not getting the mind help, not getting the mind help. Much of Trinidad's psychological support system is, he mad, she mad, get out of here, you crazy, I'm gonna hit you upside your head. You know, we don't value the minds of man and woman, the trauma that's going on, etc. Now, I take a very different and firm stance of trauma, if we want to say it that way, of direction, if we want to say it that way. I believe very firmly that 90% of the problem of today's society is how we deal with the problem, how we decided to deal with the problem. Now, this gets into a point perhaps of controversy or whatever the case may be.
That's okay.
But
we don't mind being controversial on this show.
Years ago, someone, a psychologist, had noted that he said innocently that one of the problems with our psychology of today is that we allow excuses and we make explanations and we allow bad behavior based upon something going in a different direction. That we don't push the level of holding responsibility. And he became a national hero as a result of that discussion in a different country. Now, there's a lot of truth, I believe, to that. You know, something has happened to me or to somebody. Now, what's the turning point? The direction that we go to? If there's something has happened to me, and I say this, it's compassionate to me, but firm compassion. It's a difference to me between empathy and sympathy. That's a real big category to me. Those two topics are really, really huge. Empathy and sympathy. If we just sympathize and say, I understand the reason why you have this type of behavior, and we give the message that, okay, I can have this type of behavior because that happened to me too, so I'm going to be doing the same thing. And I believe that we have fed that
right.
trauma,
so we've gone
negative
too
stuff
far
in society.
Right.
Whereas on the other hand, if we say, yes, I hear what happened to you, I understand what happened to you, can I give you a hug? Let's really listen to what's happening. Okay, now, where do we go to from here? Do you have some apologies to make? Certainly somebody has an apology to make to you, but the direction that you took, you have hurt a lot of people perhaps in your pathway. And there's consequences of your hurting others. That's called karma, if we want to use that kind of language. And the cycle goes on unless we have the compassion to stop that person from there. And that is where decision, the powerful, powerful word called decision. I made a decision. There's a host of people who have had difficult backgrounds. And guess what? You wouldn't know it, believe it or not. One of the things that we say is that somebody has had a traumatic background and they had this kind of behavior. No, that's not true. There's a lot of people who've had traumatic backgrounds and have made a decision to not go down that direction. And that has made a tremendous impact upon the direction that their lives have had. Some people have had some remnants of what happened, or whatever the case may be, but it wasn't understood behavior. They said this is not discipline, tolerance, production. This is not something that needs to be tolerated. We're not tolerating negative stuff. We're tolerating what we need to do to make some progress, you know? So there's a lot to that.
Well, there's a balance. Because yes, we do have to understand. We can't say that, we can't just palm off your violence and say, look, you have no reason to be violent. We have to understand why. We have to recognize that, to ask the questions, why are you so angry? Why are you so violent? Why are you so distrustful or whatever? You know, we have to first ask, and then we have to help heal. You know, we have to get to the point of helping them heal so that we can move forward. Yes, some people are able to just cut and dry, make a decision and move forward. Some people do need the time to be able to heal. Is the behavior acceptable? No. You know, is feeling angry natural? Yes. But what are some of the appropriate and acceptable ways that you can handle your anger? Yes? Because I think too often we just say, you can't be feeling angry. I'm human. Of course I can feel angry. Teach me. And these are things that I think even from a very young age, we tend to, children crying, hush. Children angry, stop being. We can't stop them from feeling. What we can help them do is navigate those feelings. What is an appropriate way, what is an acceptable way to handle that anger that I'm feeling?
I would like to.
One of the things, sorry, just to jump in there, right? It would have, just to point back to a point I made before, behaviors speak to something. Behaviors represent something, right? So in the counseling space, in the therapy space, the objective is to explore the behavior, to figure out what is the need behind your behavior. Now, at the end of it, we want you functional. To be functional, there's a decisive or decision that needs to be made. There's an action, which I think is what Dr. here is speaking to. I'm not cuddling the anger, because that is not going to get you anywhere. You're going to walk around being an angry person.
Right.
But what is that anger pointing to? What is in your cognitive world? What is in your thought processes that is keeping this anger alive? Do you need to let this go? For some people, healing literally means I can't fix my trauma, I have to let it go. And that takes time, as you say. It takes coming, exploring it, crying, rehashing it, writing about it, building up myself from that emotional place back into that thinking place where I'm not able to say, this happened to me, but what could my life look like after this? So I think it's about being patient, because you made a comment about people laughing at you taking a proactive step to help your daughter. We laugh because we don't think about it from our perspective. We're always other-minded. You know, we don't think about people. How would I like to be treated if I was in that situation?
Yeah, putting ourselves in the other person's shoe.
Yeah.
We're going to go on a break. When we come back, we have Science with Jess. It's our fun segment. We try to mix it up a little bit because we can get very heavy on the show. Don't go anywhere. We're going to learn all about solids, gases, and liquids when we come back. You're watching Care. Welcome back to Care. We're going to go straight into Science with Jess because we need to come back to our heavy topic of understanding misbehavior.
Hi, Jess! I was waiting to teach you about this experiment that we are now preparing.
Yeah, today we're going to learn about gravity.
Yes, I know what gravity is.
What's gravity?
Gravity is when, like, if I throw up a ball,
Yeah.
it will always come down.
You mean like this?
Oh, gravity hurts.
Who invented gravity?
Gravity
Who
hurts.
discovered gravity, sorry?
Oh.
Isaac Newton. That's the name you're trying to remember.
Yeah.
So today's experiment, we're going to show how gravity makes everything fall at the same speed. Okay? Everything on the planet falls at exactly the same speed. Now
Like
what
if
happens?
both of us jump.
Well, that's a good example. But if you think about it, if you guys both jump, you both fall at the same speed.
Yeah.
But if you look at it, you may be a little bit slower than him. And do you know why? What's the difference?
Because more air resistance is pushing on her.
Why is more air resistance pushing on her?
And on you. Because she's probably lighter.
Because she's bigger than you.
Why would she do?
There's more space. Now, if I'm falling, there's a lot more air hitting me than air hitting you, right?
Yeah, because you're heavier.
I'm also plenty bigger than you.
So it's easier for air to
push
on
against me.
Yeah, but
Right,
if
so-
I'm like so small, air will have to.
There's
it's
less
very-
air pushing on you.
So I'm like, I'm falling so small.
Right? So look at this. Let's do it with an experiment. What you're going to do, you crumple up a piece of paper. And you just, don't crumple it, you just hold that piece of paper in your hand. Ball that piece of paper up. Okay? Now I want both of you guys, hold this in your hand. You hold it in your right hand. And we're going to lift it both up. And when I say let go, you both let go. Okay? 1, 2, 3, go.
Both of us.
The ball up one fell a little bit faster, didn't it? Why did it fall a little bit faster?
Because it's a lot like heavier. It's heavier, and this it's like thinner. Since it's thinner, the air will like lift it, like let
And
it
plus,
this is much bigger than this.
Look at it this way. Exactly. There's more air pushing up on this as it falls than this.
Yes,
a
because
little bit of
if
air.
it's a rock and a feather, the rock is going to be done.
And think about it. They both weigh the same.
Yeah, they
Okay.
Because they're both paper.
Right. Now, pick up your crumpled piece of paper. Now, let's try something else. Okay, guys. So what we're going to do now is we're going to show that how when the wind resistance is the same, they're going to fall at the same speed because of gravity. Yeah. So look at these boxes.
They're the same.
They're exactly the same. They're the same shape. They're the same size and everything. So what we'll do is you put your paper in this box and you put your paper in this box. Close them up tight. Okay, so we're going to do the same experiment again. You hold that in your hand. You hold that in your hand. Let's get close to each other. Make sure the same height. And on the count of 3, we're going to let it go. No, not higher, not higher. There you go. 1, 2, 3, go. You didn't drop it at the same time. You got to drop it at the same time.
But you said 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, let it go. Okay? So let's get the same height. 1, 2, 3. Exact same speed. Now let me show you guys it with just my hands this time as well. Because I'm going to let it go exactly the same. 1, 2, 3. So the two pieces of paper that before fell at different speeds because of wind resistance, now when they have the same wind resistance, they fall at exactly the same speed.
Well, okay.
Exactly. So that shows you how gravity is the same for everything. And if I was an octopus and I had 8 arms and I could pick both you guys up and you guys were the same size, you'd fall at the same speed.
All right, dude. You're getting another kid.
Hey, come back in.
Well, I guess that's the end of our experiment.
Welcome back to Care. Today it is all about understanding misbehavior. We need to get Alta into the conversation. But I do have a segment that I have to go to. It's our Dear Marsha segment, sponsored by Look Opticians. Dear Marsha is where our viewers get to write in, and we try to sift through and find questions that are relevant so that I'm not the one answering it and the professionals are the ones answering it. So we're going to answer the viewers, and once we come back from Dear Marsha, then we're going to talk a little bit about the link between academics and the so-called misbehavior. Dear Marsha, you always say the buck stops with parents. But I have two teen girls who are only 2 years apart, yet they are as different as night and day. I have a great relationship with one and seem to do nothing but fight with the other. How do you explain this? Well, I'm not going to explain it. Doc.
I'd love to you know, there's so much in that. And I'm glad we're developing one of the points that Asha had brought out, you know, before. There's so many things in society that influences our behavior, and that's very true. For one, I believe that the most powerful influence upon behavior is the relationship with the mother and father. Relationship with the mother and father, both, as one of the most powerful influences upon the mind of the child. And each child is different, even from the same parents. They have different personalities, different makeups, okay? 2. 3, a very important influence of the mind of the mother and the mind of the father is their relationship with their mother and father. A woman who has troubled relationships with her own mother may very well pass those challenges down to relationship with her daughter, whether it be something about the daughter, both of the daughters, one of the daughters, etc. If one is maybe a little dominating, a little child can be a little dominating her type of behavior. She's a little dominating her little behavior. She may be responding to something that the mother was dominating to her. Same thing with mothers and their fathers and boys, fathers and their mothers and girls, fathers and their fathers and boys. So that generational psychological impact is very, very meaningful and powerful, and is very, very dominant in anger, in the development of an angry mind, okay, in many different levels. The other questions, and there are many questions, what kind of parenting are you doing? Are you, what's it called? Controlling parenting, thank you. A controlling parent, is that your style of control? Whereas a child needs the room to think, to develop, to be wrong, to be incorrect, and to find their own way? Or are you, whatever, a submissive parent? Are you an understanding parent? You know, what kind of style did you have? Lots of times, I don't know how many parents that tell me about this, the first child is always the experiment. The first child is always the experiment. We don't know about parenting on the first child, and so we make kind of mistakes, and we do this, and we try that, and we say this, and we say that. And some of us have horrible relationships with the first child, anger, the way that we did things, and then the second child, we learned something, or the third child, somewhere down there, we learned something, and then our relationship with that child is different, and the first child says, boy, they get away with everything, you know, and I didn't do that. And then there's other things such as...
So it appears on the surface that it's the same parent, the same home, but there are little differences that we are missing that can cause a difference.
Absolutely.
One of the things I would suggest is temperament, because she's not giving enough information to give a proper, I'll use the word diagnosis, but just in terms of natural things that differ with kids is temperament. You would have one child that the temperament is easygoing. So it's easier to like the child, engage with the child. As Doctor mentioned, birth order affects it. The responsibilities, how we relate is affected by your birth order. So if the first child is easier to get along with, she's easier to parent, maybe her personality is similar to her mom's. Whereas the second child or the next daughter, she's different. So my recommendation to her is, like, I think observation is powerful. You have to study people just to get to know the difficult daughter and talk to her, communicate, find out where they're going off, because it might just simply mean I'm transferring one way of interacting with one person onto the next, and that just doesn't work for me. Like, we could get along, it's just that the message and how you're delivering it, I can't receive it.
Right. So
in our house, growing up, my father was a policeman. Every time he turns up home, he had duties for everybody to perform. The games stopped and work went on. If you weren't doing that, books, go and sleep, wake up. When I became a parent, I applied that to my son. I found that he'd gone to St. Mary's and he was spending too much time down on grounds playing football. And when the midterm results came, they weren't good. So I banned him immediately. He ran away from my house and I cried because I couldn't understand. I was providing all this good stuff for him, but not recognizing that he has some stuff and I couldn't provide those. I cried.
We're going to go on a break.
Good.
I want to put a pin on it there. You know why? Because I do want to link academics, and I think that you've flowed really nicely into that. And so when we come back, we're going to talk Christmas because it's the most wonderful time of the year. And we're going to talk academics. Oh, an hour is not enough with this panel. Don't go anywhere, guys, because we need to wrap up when we come back. So we're going to get punched lots and lots of good information in the last segment. You're watching Care. Welcome back to Care. We are talking misbehavior and we are trying to understand it. And I feel like this segment, this episode needs an episode 2. There's so much. It's because we have such an intelligent, incredible panel today. But we're taking a break from all that because we're doing my segment because it's Christmas. And we have to do Christmas because it's the most wonderful time of the year. So, Christmas tip number 4. We're on 4 already. Oh my gosh, Christmas tip number 4. Not everyone has a great big family with whom to spend Christmas. Now, this may seem bearable if your bank account allows for a magical vacation where you could fake away the loneliness. But broke and alone? Well, that's just heartbreaking. Instead of sitting around wishing you had people to celebrate with, go volunteer. Volunteering is a great way to wash away those Christmas blues and do good all at the same time. You won't be alone, and you'll be helping those more in need than yourself, and the love you feel will stay with you throughout the entire season and more. This Christmas, open your eyes and your heart to the love that's all around you. This Christmas, volunteer. It is an awesome way. For those of us that don't have large families, it's a great way to get a family. We do not need to be pinned down to the family that God gave you. You know, we need to expand our minds. There are family members all around that we don't have the same DNA, but we certainly can become really close. I found that, I mean, definitely now, gosh, I think my family too big. We're gonna go, because we need to wrap up, but I do not want to leave without linking academics to misbehavior. That, for me, I'm very passionate about it. If anybody follows me, you all will know that I do believe that we have a high rate of undiagnosed like learning disorders and whatnot. Tim,
So,
take it away.
I want to continue that same story. I got transferred to London to work, and I took the whole family. So here he was in a new school system, where as a Caribbean person, they felt he should play more sports than academics. I grew up overnight and adjusted to games and academics. He became the deputy head boy. He was the captain of the football team and the cricket team. I kept out of it. His mother supported him. I followed the academic. That's what my father taught me. She did that piece, but as a family, he got the whole package, and he was able to be a successful young man today. Because I learned that I was messing up. I didn't understand that at all.
As a parent,
As a parent, you know, you're big and you feel you're right, but you're wrong.
So, what is the advice that you have for parents in terms of the academics? Let me tell you,
you need balance.
SEA and everything
you
going
balance.
on now, it's hard,
You need balance. If you look at the results of the SEA and the students who speak, those who have been successful, they will interview number 1, number 2. You hear a whole story. There is a formula. Mommy and daddy supported me. Miss took care of me. The principal, this whole thing. So the whole system and environment of support that add up together and come up with something called success. You look at the people who just got through the Cape, who won scholarships, the message is the same. You're hearing moral and spiritual values, and they get time to play, they do all things, but it's a package. One person alone cannot do it, one parent alone cannot do it. It requires the same village to take care of the child. That's what it is. Alta finds a good opportunity because we get a lot of the dropouts.
Right.
And we have to take care of them.
The Christmas tip was all about volunteering. So maybe you guys could go and volunteer with Alta.
All right.
I have a very strong opinion on this. I'm happy something had happened. Now, I'm happy about something you may find odd. I wrote a book called The Power and Influence of the Parent-Child Relationship. It was purposely written for teens and up, even though children younger than that have been reading it, and adults. And at 2 institutions, a girls' institution of troubled girls and a boys' institution of troubled boys, girls stole some books, boys stole some books. When do you hear children steal books? Books? Come now. They stole the books because the information in the book was speaking to a need that they had. I felt it passionately, that's why I wrote the book. They responded to it by saying, don't give me all this talk. There's something else that I need to answer the questions of the challenges that I have from what's going on in my family. Very potent and powerful. The academics, yes, I went through academics, yes, I did the da-da-da, you know, up to the various systems, some of the best schools in the world, I'll say. But I was also wise enough to know that that wasn't all of the answer. I, too, personally came from foster homes, and I, too, personally had some questions that I had that academics wasn't answering. And I watched other people around my age who were also questions and having behavioral that reflecting these questions. So my journey was to put an emphasis more into that direction and recognize that academics is not always the answer. Well, not always the answer. Academics is not answering very much. Matter of fact,
it's not the whole answer.
Self-esteem is so very important that academics can kill your self-esteem. If you don't do good, which is kind of what you experience, if you don't do good in academics, or if our parents don't say that you have to do academics, and you have something else over here that you're good at, and you're not valued at that something else that you're good at, but you're valued at something that you don't have, self-esteem goes down. And we have a habit of doing that for generation after generation after generation. We kill the spirit of so many of our young people in the nation, and it continues on. It's my opinion, I just want to say this quick, my opinion that violence that has occurred in some schools around the world, part of that is a curriculum that is not addressing the mind needs of our children. Thank you, sorry.
No, but just in terms of the misbehavior, one of the things I would like to give parents as a recommendation, when I sit with clients, I hear repeatedly, she was always like that, he's always like that. As I said before, behaviors are the storylines. So just recently I went through my report book from primary school up, and all the repetitive comments, it's like, Asha has potential, but she talks a lot, right? This is, I'm just saying, right? So in the comments, in the feedback the teachers give you are the signs that point you to if there is a learning disability. And what you can do if you keep hearing similar comments, can't focus, seems lackadaisical, whatever the case may be, follow up on it. Because it's not a hit and miss. It's a repeated pattern that's preventing them from benefiting from the learning environment. And that could be linked to why they're acting out. Because if I'm not receiving anything in the learning environment, I will occupy myself otherwise.
Well, that is a perfect piece of advice to end on. What we will do is we will put all of your information, so our guest information, if you want to hound them down, don't stress them out too much, eh? But we'll put it on our Facebook page, we'll put it on our Instagram page, Care Parenting, so that you can find them. They're like pearls of wisdom, all three of them. Guys, it's been lovely. We'll see you next week for another episode of Care.
This episode was brought to you by Target Corned Beef and Naturally Almond.